My name is Julie, and I'm just finishing off a PhD in maths. And I suppose many times over the last few years, I've been inside in a pub, and I've been talking to someone, and they say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I'm doing a PhD in mathematics." And most of them make a polite remark and walk away. But for those that remain talking to me, the next question they ask is, "Well, tell me a bit about the PhD." And I suppose for the first few years, that's where I would like to make a polite remark and walk away. So to answer that question, I came up with the following story. So once upon a time, there was infinitely many flies in this infinitesimally small pub. And what I mean by that is there was as many flies as you can possibly think of in this pub, which was the size of the tip of a pin. And that pub was located at the centre of this tennis ball, the centre of this spherical world. And every so often, a drunk fly would stagger out of the pub and fly randomly around and try to escape out of this spherical world. And mathematically, that would be no problem at all, except there was all these obstacles in the poor fly's way. And if this poor drunk fly flying around randomly hit one of these obstacles, it spontaneously combusted. So all the flies were inside in the pub, and sometimes looking out the window, they'd see one of their friends hitting one of these obstacles and spontaneously combusting. Sometimes their friend would disappear and they'd never see the fly again. And they wondered, well, is it possible at all to escape from this spherical world? Well, there was one wise fly in the pub, and that wise fly said, "You know what we need now? We need a mathematician." So he said we should contact a mathematician and ask him, is it possible for one of us to escape out of this spherical world? So the wise fly rang the mathematician and he said, "Okay, we've got all these infinitely many flies in this tiny little pub centred at the centre of the spherical world, and we want to know, is it possible for us to escape out of the spherical world?" So the mathematician was a bit confused because the fly used words like pub and drunk. The mathematician said, "Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying you've got Brownian motion starting at the origin, and you want to know, is there positive probability that it can escape out of a sphere?" And the wise fly said, "Yeah, okay, that sounds about right." So the mathematician went to work. And another common question I often get asked is, well, what do you do all day? Like, okay, you do maths, what do you do? And I suppose what I do a lot of the time is I scribble on a piece of paper trying to solve a problem, and then I crumple that paper up and I throw it in the bin because I don't solve the problem, and then I repeat that process day in, day out. And that's exactly what this mathematician did, until one day he didn't have to crumple up that paper anymore. And when a mathematician solves a problem, often what they come up with is something called a theorem. And that's exactly what he did in this case of the drunk flies. He came up with a theorem that solved the problem. He came up with a tick-the-box condition for the drunk fly to be able to have a chance of escaping out of this spherical world. So the mathematician rang up the fly and he said, "Okay, I've solved the problem. I've come up with the solution, but I need to know about the size of the obstacles." So the wise fly said, well, he said, as it happens, there's a secret document, and it describes exactly the size of the obstacles. It's called a function or something. And the mathematician's eyes lit up, and he said, "That's exactly what I want." So he took the function, he put it into this tick-the-box condition, and it satisfied the condition. So he was able to tell the wise fly that it was possible that one day one of those drunk flies could escape from this spherical world. And the flies were delighted, because if a fly managed to escape from the spherical world, they'd get eternal fame and glory. So the mathematician, anyway, went back to work after solving his problem, and he wasn't off the phone from the wise fly. Then the phone rang again, and this time it was bacteria. And the bacteria said, "I've got this problem. I've got bacteria at the centre of this ball of soil, and there's all these little balls inside in the soil, and they kill the bacteria. And I was wondering, is it possible for the bacteria to escape out of this ball of soil?" And the mathematician said, "Oh, yeah, it's just like the drunk fly in the spherical world." And the bacteria said, No, I'm bacteria, I'm not a drunk fly at all." The mathematician said, "No," he said, "to me, you're the exact same. To solve your problem is the exact same problem as solving the drunk fly problem." So he didn't have to do any more work. He was able to pick his theorem out again and say, "Well, give me this function that describes the size of the obstacles, and I'll be able to tell you then whether the bacteria has a chance of escaping out of the ball of soil." And that's my story about the drunk fly and the mathematician. Thanks very much for listening.